Morning. It is Thursday, June 18th. I hope you are doing well. This morning we will continue with Chapter 4, Festival Theater. In Western civilization, as we said yesterday, uh, theater can be traced back to the 5th century BC in Athens, Greece. At that time, theater was performed in honor of the god Dionysus, the god of wine, fertility, and theater. Four festivals were held in honor of Dionysus every year. At three of those festivals, theater performances were held, and at one of them, the major Dionysian festival called the City Dionysia, three tragic playwrights competed each year. Each playwright wrote three tragedies. They also wrote what is known as a satyr play, which is a comedy. During that century, over that century, approximately 900 tragedies were written. Of those 900, 32 of them still survive, and they are all written by three playwrights, Sophocles, Aeschylus, and Euripides. Each of these events was a competition, with a winner emerging after the festival. Important to note that the festival drew thousands of people, and to accommodate the festival, a theater was built for the purpose. It was called the Theater of Dionysus. It sat on the side of a hill at the bottom of the city of Athens. The playing area, the stage, faced east so that the rising sun could provide light on the stage. The stairs, the seating was tiered from the bottom of the hill upwards along the mountain. That's where the audience sat. And around an open playing area. This was an arena theater, so the playing area was circular. It was called the orchestra. At the stage end of this area, there was a structure. It was two stories, had three doors. It was the facade of a building, usually a palace. It was called the Scena. All of the action of all of the plays was performed in front of this facade. It never changed. Characters were able to make entrances and exits through three doors in that structure. The play identified the location through dialogue. Once the characters started speaking to one another, they revealed the location. On either side of the scena or scene house, that facade, were two entrances called paradoi. These provided ways for chorus members to enter and exit. And I want to talk a little bit about the players in Greek tragedy, the actors. There were four categories of performers in Greek tragic theater. The first were actors, and there were three of them. Each of the actors portrayed a character or more than one character. The main character, the title character in a play, was usually played by the same actor. But to change characters, because these were all men, all of the actors in these tragedies were male. To change characters, all of the performers, all of the actors wore masks, and they represented male characters, female characters, old, young, etc. They also served to help amplify the voice because they were performing in a very large space. And while the acoustics were good, they weren't always good enough to amplify sound or to uh, pro- project the sound over the audience. In addition to the three speaking actors playing the main roles, we had a chorus of 12 to 15 men. These men were selected because ideally they resembled one another in appearance. The Greek tragic chorus was to serve as a single character. Um, and the purpose of the chorus was to comment, to explain, speaking directly to the audience about previous scenes. A scene would happen. After the scene ended, the entrance of the chorus spoke directly to the audience, commenting on what had happened in the previous scene. The chorus also served to help reinforce the theme of the play, and the audience served as the ideal spectator. They listened, they heard the dialogue, they paid attention to the action, and this was obvious in the way they responded to it, what they said about it. So, a chorus of 10 to 15 men. There was also a musician, excuse me, and this musician usually played the flute, something that could carry a melody. Finally, there was a number of extras, supernumeraries who were there to fill that big space, to provide interest, making the stage picture, if you will, more interesting. Also, if there were scenes, for example, at the opening of Oedipus the King, the citizens of Thebes gather in front of the palace of Oedipus to ask for his help. That's where these extras would be used. Excuse me. Now, speaking of Oedipus the King was by Sophocles, and it was performed for the first time around 421 BC. Uh, and of course, during that time, the play was well regarded, well received, certainly um, a powerful story, uh, and it is an example of Greek tragic theater and of how tragic theater is constructed. First of all, it tells the story, as all Greek tragedies do, of the influence that the gods have over the lives of mortals. Remember that Greece and Greek culture, Athenian culture, was pagan, and there was a god for everything. And it was very important to appease the gods, to make the gods happy. Uh, in doing that, the Greeks made sacrifices to the gods. That's one of the reasons why the Dionysian festival was held each year, each spring, in honor of Dionysus to please that god. Because remember, Dionysus was also the god of wine and fertility. Fertility, not just human reproduction, but animals, also bountiful harvests, etc. The gods had the power of prophecy. And if a god made a prophecy about the life of a mortal, there was nothing that mortal could do to change it. If the god said it, it would happen. Changing or trying to alter the will of the gods was dangerous. It was devastating. The individual who tried to do that, tried to interfere in that prophecy, suffered mightily and sometimes to their death. In a Greek tragedy, as you can imagine, there is a lot of suffering. That is why the play is a tragedy. People suffer and they die. Um, but interfering with the will of the gods is devastating. It is something that will cause a very difficult existence. This is what happens in Oedipus the King. Oedipus is the king of Thebes. When we meet him, when the play begins, he is their leader. The citizens of Thebes love him, they respect him, because when he came to the city of Thebes, he was able to lift a plague, referred to as the riddle of the Sphinx. I encourage you to look that up for your interest to find out what that riddle is. But he solved the riddle, lifting the plague and freeing the people from a great period of suffering. When he arrived in the city of Thebes, the king, the previous king, had been killed. He was dead, which meant that the queen was alone on the throne. What happens when a single man comes into a city and proves himself to be a hero? He marries the queen. And that's what happened. And they started a family and had four children, two boys and two girls. When the story begins, another plague has fallen upon the people of Thebes, and they are suffering. This plague is in some cases much worse than the one that brought Oedipus into the picture. They are there to ask Oedipus for his help. Oedipus hears them, and being the good king that he is, he lets them know that he is aware of their suffering and that he is going to do everything in his power to lift this plague, to end it. He says to them, I have sent my brother in law, Creon, the wife or the brother of his wife, to the oracle at Delphi. Now, oracles speak to mortals. The word of the god comes through the mortal or the oracle and is passed on to the mortal. And he sends Creon to the oracle. And within moments of the plea from the citizens of Thebes, Creon returns with news. He tells Oedipus that the gods say, the oracle said, that to lift the plague, you have to rid the city of what he referred to as a foul presence. That foul presence is the murderer of the previous king. Previous king was murdered. Um, if Oedipus is able to find that murderer, that foul presence, and get rid of them by blood for blood or banishment, that plague will be lifted. Oedipus hears this and accepts the challenge. Oedipus's acceptance of that challenge, his statement that he will find this person, lift the plague, and save his city, is the inciting incident of the play. If you remember about the climactic plot structure, the inciting incident is that event that happens during the rising action that starts the plot in motion. Everything that happens from that point to the climax of the play has to do with addressing that issue, um, solving that problem. So Oedipus sets off on this mission, this goal of finding the murderer of King Laius. To do this, he interviews several people along the way to provide information about this murder. He basically conducts an investigation. What is revealed is tragic. Uh, with every encounter with a character who has information, the story becomes more difficult, more intense. Uh, Always referenced in this story is prophecy. and the prophecy of the gods, what was stated to both parties involved in this tragedy. I encourage you to watch the video that I shared with you. It is on YouTube, Oedipus the King. It is an older video from the 1980s. However, it's a very powerful telling of the story, and it also demonstrates what we were talking about earlier last week about the decision or the choices that directors can make in telling a story that was written during the 5th century BC and putting a, granted, this was more than 40 years ago that this film was made, but a more modern look on the telling of this ancient Greek tragedy. Theater in Greece was significant because not only did you have this major theater competition that or brought to the public the work of these amazing playwrights every year. There was also a festival that highlighted comedies. The Tragedy Festival primarily was the city Dionysia. Also, in celebration of Dionysus and in honor of him, the Greeks also held a comedy festival. It was called the Lenaia, Lenaia. It was held in the winter of the year. Um, Cold weather wasn't Greek tragedy was the benchmark. That was the high respected dramatic literature. Comedy was something that was pure entertainment. It kind of appealed to the masses, certainly, but it was also a little risque, often very overtly sexual, and jokes and comedy were made at the expense of others or the gods or whatever. And the jokes were in a lot of cases, vulgar. So it wasn't a festival that the Greeks necessarily wanted to publicize a lot and have it attract a lot of tourists to attend, not like the city Dionysia, which showcased Greek culture at its best. The comedy festival, smaller. Five comic dramatists participated each year, and each one of them wrote one play. Over that period of the many plays that were written, 11 of them survive, and they are all written by the playwright Aristophanes. Greek comedy structurally is different. It doesn't follow necessarily a climactic plot structure. It is very big on action. It's very big on humor, visual humor, um, lots of fun, lots of interaction with the audience. The plot of a Greek comedy centers around something called a happy idea. And the happy idea is a far-fetched, almost inconceivable scheme or idea that the story revolves around. And the way that idea is debated and put into practice and questioned and eventually reaching a resolution and the end of the play when the players, the characters, the actors in the play enter into the audience with celebration, throwing out sweets and candy and just having a good time. This was Greek comedy. Not as popular as Greek tragedy, but certainly something that was a part of the origin of theater during the 5th century BC. I'll be back.